The Adolescent Puzzle by Charlie Edgar. The Adolescent Puzzle. Stories about figuring out where you belong. The journey of making true friendships requires vulnerability, empathy, courage, and understanding one's own worth and boundaries. Ethan's first day. Ethan stood outside the school gates, his backpack straps tightened like a lifeline. He had rehearsed this day in his head 100 times, but none of these versions include the knot in his stomach or the way his palms were sweating despite the cool air. Transferring in the middle of the school year was awkward enough. Being the new kid in year 10 felt like walking into a film halfway through and trying to pretend you knew the plot. The corridors buzzed with familiarity, inside jokes, casual greetings, and the kind of energy that made Ethan feel like a background character. The morning lessons passed in a blur. In maths, he sat on the edge of a group who barely glanced his way. In history, the teacher asked him to introduce himself and he muttered his name, while feeling every pair of eyes on him. Though no one said anything unkind, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that people were giving him sideways looks, measuring him up, silently judging. The truth was, they weren't. They were just being teenagers, half distracted, half disinterested, but Ethan's nerves distorted every glance into something personal. He scribbled notes furiously just to keep his hands busy, counting the minutes until break time. At lunch, he scanned the packed cafeteria, each table a fortress of existing friendships. He spotted an empty seat next to a boy eating crisps and took a deep breath. "Mind if I sit here?" Ethan said. The boy looked up, shrugged and nodded. Ethan sat. A silence hung between them, thick and itchy. He fumbled with his sandwich, trying to think of something to say, but the words sat stubbornly at the back of his throat. Eventually, the boy got up and left, with a wave to someone else across the room. Ethan stared at his half-eaten lunch, wondering if this was how it would be: awkward, quiet, forgettable, embarrassing. That afternoon, during science, the teacher announced a lesson group project: design an experiment to measure human response time. The class buzzed with shifting chairs and casual groans. Ethan was placed with 3 classmates, Tyrese, Logan, and Holly, who clearly already knew each other. As they pulled their desks together, Ethan gave a small smile, which none of them returned. "All right," said Tyrese, leaning back in his chair. "Let's do the ruler drop thing, easy marks." Logan nodded. "Yeah, classic. We can get it done quick." Ethan cleared his throat. "Or we could try something with sound, like test if people react faster to noise and visual signal." There was a brief pause. Holly blinked. "Yeah, maybe." Tyrese shrugged. "I don't know. Visual's easier." And just like that, the conversation moved on. They were talking again, back to the rule drop idea. Ethan felt heat creeping up his neck. He opened his mouth to try again, but stopped himself. His heart was pounding like he'd just sprinted across the pitch. He looked at their faces, confident, easy, like they belonged. They interrupted each other without hesitation, laughed mid-sentence, no second-guessing, no awkward silences. He didn't know how to slot himself into that rhythm. By the end of the lesson, Ethan had barely spoken again. He'd written neat notes, nodded politely, and stayed quiet. The group seemed fine with that. As the bell rang, Logan gave him a distracted layer without making eye contact. Ethan mumbled a goodbye and packed his bag, slowly, stomach heavy. That night, he scribbled in a small black notebook he kept by his bed. "Spoke up today. They didn't really go for it. Maybe it was a bad idea. Maybe I said it weird. For a second, I felt like vanishing, but I didn't. I stayed. I tried. Maybe they weren't ignoring me. Maybe they just didn't hear me properly. Still figuring things out, but saying something felt better than staying silent. Small steps. Just a reminder. People aren't mind readers. Speak up. The next morning, his form tutor introduced him to the class again, and Ethan gave a tight-lipped nod. In English, they were studying a group poem, and he was paired with a trio who barely acknowledged him. In PE, he forgot his kit and had to sit out. He sank further into himself, frustration simmering just beneath his skin. The next day, Ethan felt the usual nerves, but something was different. He'd survived speaking up. That counted for something. As the science lesson began and the class gathered into their group project teams again, he walked over Tyrese, Logan, and Holly with a bit more purpose. They were already halfway through setting up the ruler drop test. "Hey," Ethan said, sliding into a seat. "I was thinking maybe we can run the same test with a sound cue too, just for comparison. I could set up a timer on my phone." There was a beat of silence, short than yesterday's. Logan tilted his head, like, see if people react faster to sound than light? "Yeah," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Could make it more interesting, more data." Tyrese shrugged. "Sure, why not?" Holly looked up from the worksheet. "I'll write that down. We can compare both." It wasn't enthusiastic, but it wasn't dismissal either. It was something. As they worked, Ethan found himself actually contributing, timing reactions, noting results, even cracking a joke when Logan dropped the ruler early and blamed his nervous system lag. By the end of the lesson, they had full results table and basic conclusion. "Good idea with the sound thing," Tyrese said, packing up. "Miss'll probably give us extra marks for that." Ethan nodded, a small smile pulling at his lips. Glad it worked. It wasn't magic. He wasn't suddenly the center of the group, and no one asked him to hang out after school, but they listened, and this time, his idea had landed. But later that day, in computer science, he noticed a classmate, Luca, struggling with some code. Ethan, a bit of a coding whiz, hesitated. Approaching someone was always a gamble, but he remembered how it felt to sit alone. That was something he could change. "Hey, I saw you were working on that Python project," Ethan said after class, his voice low but steady. "I could help if you want." Luca looked up surprised. "You know Python?" Ethan smiled. "A bit. I've made a few games before." They stayed behind for 15 minutes, heads bent over a laptop. Luca was funny when he got into it, sarcastic in a dry way that made Ethan laugh more than he expected. As they packed up, Luca asked, "You sitting with anyone tomorrow at lunch?" "Not yet," Ethan said. "Cool, come sit with me. Maybe bring your code. I want to see that game." That night, Ethan's notebook entry was positive. "They actually used my idea today. It wasn't a big deal to them, but it was to me. It felt good to be part of it, even just a little. Still didn't say much, but I didn't fade out either. I even made a joke. It got a laugh. I even spoke to someone new today, Luca. He seems into coding games too. I helped him out a bit, but he's actually really funny. Feels like maybe I've found someone I could get on with. Today felt better." The next few days saw a slow thaw. Luca introduced him to Naomi and Zeke, two others who sat at their table. They were all into different things. Naomi played bass guitar, Zeke was obsessed with chess, but they had an easy rhythm that, to Ethan's relief, didn't exclude him. At the weekend, Luca messaged Ethan to join a local gaming night at the community centre. Ethan debated it for ages. What if he was awkward in person? What if he said something stupid? But he pushed himself. The event turned out to be low-key crisps, laughter, a few heated Mario Kart battles. On the walk home, Luca said, "You're alright, you know. You were quiet, but you're kinda cool." Ethan chuckled. "Thanks, I think." For the first time in weeks, Ethan didn't feel like a background character. He was still figuring things out, but now he wasn't doing it alone.